Hey everybody, Donkey Storm here, bringing you another Shadowlands class video, today focusing on the Retribution Paladin. Guys, I have to say this is a spec I'm pretty excited for, that I think has seen some positive changes. In this video we're going to be looking at the changes made to Retribution, speculate on how they will affect how the class will play, and then go over the strengths and weaknesses of Ret, hopefully deciding if this is the class that's right for you going into Shadowlands. This is not a video about DPS numbers collected on Alpha or whether or not Ret's going to be topping the damage charts when Shadowlands goes live, as DPS tuning is still ongoing and there's really not much reason to concern ourselves with that just yet. If you enjoy the video and you want to see more, please like and hit that sub button to be notified about when I've got more content coming out, or check out some of my other Shadowlands class previews in the description. Now, without further ado, let's begin. So the phrase we've been hearing a lot going into Shadowlands is class identity, not spec identity. Blizzard wants each spec to feel like it, well, specializes in one particular part of the class's kit, rather than playing a completely different class with each spec. In my opinion, this works better for some classes and specs than others, but I think Ret Paladin is an example of everything that is right with this concept. Let's take a look at the Paladin abilities that have become baseline, because these are a big reason why I feel like playing Ret is going to be awesome in Shadowlands. First of all, auras are back for all specs. That's Concentration Aura, which reduces silence and interrupt time on all affected party members, Crusader Aura, which increases mount speed, Devotion Aura, a damage reduction, and Retribution Aura, which now gives all affected paladins wings for a short time when an ally dies. I think this one's a little bit weird, and you might end up seeing it turning into a passive rather than an aura. Still a pretty cool flavor paladin ability. In addition to auras, all paladins are receiving Blessing of Sacrifice, Sense Undead, Shield of the Righteous, Turn Evil, and Word of Glory, Hammer of Wrath, and Wake of Ashes are all going from talents to baseline abilities. So what's so exciting about this? Paladins are supposed to be warriors of the light, truly a hybrid warrior and caster of holy spells. But playing a Ret Paladin BFA doesn't really feel like that. You do your damage and that's mostly it. With the addition or reintroduction of these baseline abilities, I think the utility that Ret's going to bring to the table is going to make them a highly sought after DPS class, specifically in Mythic Plus. Sure, some of them, like Sense Undead, are mostly class flavor, but a DPS being able to bring a damage reduction to a dungeon group is pretty valuable, as is the utility of spot healing with Word of Glory, helping mitigate damage with Blessing of Sacrifice, and maybe even finding some use with Shield of the Righteous, although it does require a shield, which could be tricky. Word of Glory, Hammer of Wrath, and Wake of Ashes coming out of the talent tree also frees up some new talent options as well, which we'll take a look at next. The Ret Paladin talent tree has gotten quite a makeover, but I don't believe that this will change the spec's playstyle at its core. The first row of talents remains the same, with Zeal, Righteous Verdict, and Execution Sentence. In row 2, Hammer of Wrath has become a baseline ability and has been replaced with Empyrean Power, a talent that gives Crusader Strike a 15% chance to make your next Divine Storm deal 25% extra damage. Row 3, your crowd control row, remains the same. The fourth row has been completely blown up. Consecration and Wake of Ashes have both become baseline abilities, and Divine Judgment has been removed. In their place, row 5 from BFA essentially moves down a row, and you have a choice of Unbreakable Spirit, Cavalier, and Eye for an Eye. For row 5, Divine Purpose has been moved to this spot. Holy Avenger is now available to the Retribution spec, which triples holy power gain for 20 seconds, and Seraphim is also now available to Ret on this row. For row 6, we've still got Selfless Healer and Justicar's Vengeance, but Word of Glory has been made baseline and replaced with Healing Hands, which reduces the cooldown of Lay on Hands if you use it on an ally below 30% health. Finally, for the last row, you've still got Crusade and Inquisition, but Divine Purpose has been replaced with Sanctified Wrath, which extends Avenging Wrath and causes you to do AoE damage to nearby enemies while it is active. Whew, that's a lot of changes, but none of these talents sound like they're going to cause groundbreaking changes to the spec, and it feels as if the Ret playstyle for dealing damage will remain the same at its core. As for ability changes, like most classes, Ret sees their AoE spell, Divine Storm, go from being able to hit an unlimited number of targets down to a maximum of 5. Like I've said in the past class videos, this is par for the course in Shadowlands and something just about everyone will need to deal with, so I don't see this as much of a nerf. It's also worth mentioning that Wake of Ashes does not have a target limit, although its damage seems to have been toned down since it has gone from a talent to a baseline ability. Beyond that, and the many new added baseline abilities, there's no significant changes. As for Covenant abilities, the Kyrian ability, Divine Toll, allows you to cast Judgment on 5 nearby targets instantly on a 1-minute cooldown. The Vithir ability, Ashen Hallow, hallows the ground of an area for 30 seconds and deals damage in that area every 2 seconds, as well as healing allies in the area. You can use Hammer of Wrath on targets inside the hollow. This ability is on a 4-minute cooldown. The Necrolord ability, Vanquisher's Hammer, throws a hammer at your target, dealing shadow damage and causing your Templar's Verdict to also trigger a Divine Storm. Finally, the Night Fae ability, Blessing of the Seasons, which allows you to access 4 blessing buffs, all of which are on a 30-second cooldown. This includes Blessing of Spring, a buff to healing, Blessing of Summer, which adds holy power to attacks, Blessing of Autumn, which adds cooldown reduction, and Blessing of Winter, which adds frost damage, a slow, and attack speed buff. Time and testing will tell which of these 4 abilities turns out to be the best, but on my first impression, none of them stands out to me as being a absolute go-to, so we'll just have to wait and see. So what does this mean for how Ret Paladin will feel and play? DPS-wise, I don't think Ret's going to feel substantially different from BFA. Your holy power builders and spenders are going to be largely the same. I think the biggest thing Ret players have to look forward to is their newly found utility and their ability to affect their groups in new beneficial ways. If you like the idea of being sort of a Swiss Army knife DPS that can do a little bit of everything, bring lots of little things to the table, I think Ret Paladin Shadowlands is going to be a spec that allows good players to squeeze a lot of extra value out of their characters. So if the Ret changes are sounding pretty good to you, let's get into the strengths of Ret Paladin and why you might consider picking up this spec for Shadowlands. Our first strength is that Ret is a well-rounded damage dealer. The Ret Paladin is comfortable to deal damage with in just about any scenario as long as you can be in melee range of your target. They have strong and consistent single target and AoE damage. Since they do not need to maintain dots or debuffs on their targets, Ret Paladins do not really suffer a DPS loss from target switching, which is a really nice bonus for raid encounters with lots of ad switching or Mythic Plus dungeons with mobs dying quickly. If you've ever played a spec that's either too single target or too AoE focused, you'll understand how nice it is to play a balanced spec that can compete in any situation. Our second strength is outstanding utility. The utility department has only gotten better in Shadowlands, and I think this is going to be a place where Ret Paladins really shine in the coming expansion. The Return of Auras, Word of Glory, Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Freedom, Repentance. Man, there are so many little extras that a Ret Paladin is going to be able to bring to the table. I really think they're going to be a blast to play in a 5-man group. If you take pride in utilizing your character to its fullest and doing the little things that often amount to the success of your group, strongly consider maining Ret Paladin in Shadowlands. A third strength is great defensives. Paladins are notoriously hard to kill, and Ret is no different. You've got a true immunity and Divine Shield, which can be abused in all sorts of fun ways. You've got Shield of Vengeance, which I'm looking forward to pairing with Blessing of Sacrifice. You've got Lay on Hands and Blessing of Protection, as well as the ability to heal yourself. You can't do DPS when you're dead, and luckily for Ret, you've got lots of ways to keep yourself alive and kicking when the going gets tough. So I've been pretty positive about Ret Paladins, and I do feel like they're looking like a super solid DPS choice going into Shadowlands given what we know right now. But no spec is without their weak points, so let's talk about what you might not like about playing Ret Paladin. First of all is mobility. Aside from Divine Steed, which at the moment in the Shadowlands Alpha is on a 1-minute cooldown up from 45 seconds, Paladins do not have much in the way of increased mobility. Blessing of Freedom is nice when you're immobilized, but Paladins lack that super fast and consistent speed we see from classes like Rogues, Demon Hunters, or Monks. And while Ret does get Crusader or a back, that's not going to help you while you're in combat. Consider them a step ahead of Death Knights. If you have need for speed, you may want to look elsewhere. So another thing you may not like about playing Ret is that they haven't seen any huge changes. As they've done with many specs performing well in BFA, Blizzard took in if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality with the DPS rotation of Ret. If you already like Ret in BFA, there's no reason you wouldn't like it in Shadowlands, but if you want something shiny and new at the beginning of a new expansion, you'll likely want to look elsewhere. So what's the Templar's verdict? I think Ret Paladin is shaping up to be a really solid DPS choice in Shadowlands. It has a tried and true rotation coming over from BFA. It's having a lot of fun utility and class flavor added, and it's just an all-around balanced and solid looking spec. I feel pretty good recommending this spec as a melee DPS goes in Shadowlands, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree that Ret is looking good, or are there some changes you wish you would have seen? Let me know in the comments section below, and of course, if you enjoyed the video, I always greatly appreciate a like or a sub, so you can check out when I've got more content coming your way. Until next time, this has been Donkey Storm.